Dig with everyone, Kajima Tashiv, and welcome back to episode number 50 fucking 2. 1 year of the Inline G Flute podcast with me, your host, motherfucking Inline G. 1 whole year of Inline G. Uno año, baby. But guys, it is a delicious, crisp June morning here. It's got that kind of air you can just drink and you gulp it up and the wee birds are out and they're tweeting like fuck and everything's great. I actually find it a lot easier to practice in this weather as well. I don't know if you guys have the same thing. I think it's generally much easier to keep your mental health in check when the good weather comes rolling around again. Like I go for my daily walks to get my 10,000 steps in, and I do make a wee point of like mindfully noticing a couple of smells or a couple of sights or things like that. But in the winter you get that fucking horrible like sideways rain lashing against you, just pelting into you and you're soaked to the bone, and it takes a huge amount of effort to even just go for your walk, for me anyway. And a few times I'll just say, fuck it, you know what, I'm not going to. I'll stay in my nice warm bed instead. But then my day is off to a slow start. Or a slower start than usual, certainly. And then I keep using that excuse throughout the day. I'm like, I don't need to practice today. Sure, it's a self-care day. I'll look after myself. It's an easy day. Take a wee day off. It'll do you good. But eventually then I come to regret that and I beat myself up. And I'm like, for fuck's sake, if I just went in the fucking walk, my head would be in the right place. I'd be gentle. And I'd be kind with myself. And I'd be mindfully ready to engage with my day. But in summer, this isn't a problem. I'm bouncing off to the park with a podcast on my ears, 10,000 steps, slurping down the fucking smells of fresh cut grass. And especially, I had this today, that lovely smell you get when it's been raining the night before, like a big storm. Oh, that leftover rain smell. Gorgeous. I'm in a very good mood. So, lads, we're banking episodes here. We're banking them. We're getting them in the vault, locked down with the Nazi gold, because I'm getting ready for NFA. It's only 3 weeks away now. Well, 3 weeks till I go to America. I'll be doing a wee holiday before that. But I'll be doing a lot of guest episodes in NFA. So that's why at the minute we're getting a lot of solo episodes. We're banking them in and getting them into the vault. But these episodes do take a great deal of research. And I absolutely fucking love it. I haven't done these in a while. Since the start of the podcast, I haven't had such a long run of independent solo episodes. And it's so much fucking fun. And this week's episode was a lot of fun. Sometimes I come on this podcast and I don't know what the fuck I'm going to talk about. But occasionally you just get this wee sliver of an idea. And then I can stick my head down its arse and go rummaging around and see if I can find something worthwhile. So I knew I wanted to do an episode on the Poulenc Flute Sonata. But I didn't know what yet. I was going to do an analysis. I was going to do a background story. And then there's me legitimately 2 days ago, I was up to 4 a.m. in the morning, legitimately reading medical journals from 2013 on recorded decapitations amongst pedestrians in road traffic collisions and watching videos of a pair of boobs singing. All doing this while I'm stone cold sober. Pinky promise. So, follow me down the garden path as I look at how an alleged, I smell a fucking rat, alleged decapitation in 1930s Hungary led to the most played flute and piano work of all time, as well as an opera about a giant set of tits that get chopped off and fly away. So, or rather, allegedly the most played flute and piano work of all time. That was a fellow called David Owen Norris. That is such a hard name to say, man. David Owen Norris. He said that in 2015. He did a lot of broadcasting on classical music for the BBC. He did that playlist series for a while as well. The most played flute and piano work of all time. That's something people love to throw around with this piece, with the Poulenc Flute Sonata, which has literally zero factual basis to make that claim. Zero. But sure, don't let a small thing like facts get in the way of a good fucking story. Now, we're going to talk briefly about Monsieur Poulenc, where you find out what fucking thread I was pulling on. You'll not believe this. But Mr. Poulenc, now, first of all, it is pronounced Poulenc, okay? Because of years of ingrained indoctrination back in Belfast, I hear it and I often pronounce it as Poulenc, which is awful. But technically, by the way, that is called Hiberno English. It's what we speak in Ireland. And it's okay for me to do it because technically we're a minority. So if you say I'm doing it wrong, it's maybe a hate crime. So watch yourselves. But Monsieur Poulenc was born in 1899 and he lived until 1963. Yes, like it's in the 60s. Like, that's way longer than people think Poulenc lived. 1963, Poulenc clocked out. There's videos of him playing. There's videos of him playing the Flute Sonata on piano. There's videos of him performing at the Compile. Poulenc would have heard the Beatles and the Stones. It's not a long time ago. And he was born in the 8th arrondissement of Paris. So Paris is divided up into different arrondissements or districts, little sections. And he was born in the 8th, which is a very posh district, I have to say. But his family had a bit of money. They had a few French francs knocking about. So his mum was Jenny, is that right? I don't think that's right. That looks like autocorrect. Sorry, Poulenc's mum, I can't remember your real name. Maybe it was Jenny. Anyway, she was very artistic and came from a very well-off and artsy Parisian family. However, his dad, Emile, was a businessman. Now, fun fact, this is very fun for me as well, as a football man. He was the owner of a company called Poulenc Frères, which is a pharmaceutical company who still exists to this day under the name Rhône Poulenc. Okay, Rhône being the river and Poulenc the family name. The chemicals division of Rhône Poulenc is now owned by Bayer. Does Bayer ring a bell? Does that name ring a bell for regular listeners especially? The pharma giant from Germany. They have a wee football team. Bayer Leverkusen, undefeated domestic double winners this year, and the team I've been following all over Europe. How's about that for a wee link, huh? Anyway, Emile was deeply Catholic, as a lot of people are in France at this time, especially in the upper classes. It's very common. Even to this day, it's common as well. How deeply Catholic he was, I do sometimes question a little bit, because most of them are only doing it for image, to be totally honest. They turn up to the big games. Now, they go to the cup finals, like Christmas and Easter, they'll go to them, but you never see them week in, week out. They're fair weather supporters of Catholicism. But anyway, Poulenc didn't study music famously. So Francis didn't study music famously at a conservatoire. He actually just got a load of private lessons. And in Paris at this time, when Poulenc's growing up, we've seen the explosion of Debussy and Ravel and the Impressionist movement, while at the same time, the hyper-emotional, rich, late romanticism of people like César Franck, it's still very popular, even coming out of the Wagner era as well. So you've got a wee teenage Poulenc knocking about Paris, and he starts going to this bar called Le Boeuf sur le Toit, the beef on the roof, or the cow on the roof is probably what it meant to be. It still exists actually, but it's moved a few streets along. I think it's always been in the 8th arrondissement, and it still exists. You can check it out on Google. Very famous bar. So in the 1920s, this bar does a few wee music nights and things like that, and especially for avant-garde art. So not just music, but also visual art, poetry, etc., etc. But it was a bit of a meeting place at the time. Now, a lot of people who are quite well known were starting to pop down to this. People like Picasso, Apollinaire, and music was done often by Gershwin and Eric Satie as well, who composed the Gymnopédie, which is in every single fucking TV advert ever. So, in this wee group of people that were going to Le Boeuf sur le Toit, there are 6 composers in this wee group, and they decided to form a wee composition group, a wee collective, if you will, to help promote each other's works and to do concerts together, and they called it, very aptly, Les Six, which is French for the 6. So, Les Six, composer group, it had Francis Poulenc, Louis Jury, Germaine Taillefer, Georges Auriche, Arthur Honegger, Danse la Chèvre. I'm sure you flute players know that. Dance of the Goat. It's fucking great. And Darius Milhaud, who also wrote brilliant Flute Sonata. Absolutely brilliant. So that's our 6 lads in Les Six. Very well known group. Now, these lads wrote in very different styles, but they shared values. They shared a couple of values. Their main values they shared was an opposition to fucking everything else, but mainly the opposition of heavy romanticism of Wagner and Franck, and opposition to the Impressionist movement of Debussy and Ravel. So often their music was quite neoclassical. It had like these beautiful tunes, like melodies that we're seeing in Mozart's time, those kind of thing. Vivid colours, fun, a lot of absurdism written into the music. And it doesn't go too weird harmonically. So it's not, we're not far away from Schoenberg's time as well, and the 12-tone system. It doesn't go anywhere near that. It's much more absurdist and surrealist and very, very fun. So, Poulenc, he's in Les Six. He's quite young at this time. He goes along with them composing and learning at the same time. He actually took composition lessons from Ravel and also Charles Coquelin before he actually visited the new Viennese school. He went to Vienna and visited the lads there. So the new Viennese school, the old school is Mozart, Haydn, Beethoven. The new Viennese school, or the second Viennese school, is Berg, Anton Berg, Schoenberg, and Webern. So that's the 3 new lads. He went to visit them. He didn't like what they were doing because they were doing the 12-tone wanky system. Everything's up and fucking down. But he admired the 3 lads nonetheless as artists. So he came back from Vienna to Paris again with his renewed energy as an artist. Still quite young at this time, and a big break. lands with Mr. Poulenc. Sergei Diaghilev, world famous ballet impresario. You've heard of Diaghilev. He actually commissioned Rite of Spring. So if you know Rite of Spring, there's like a Patron by Stravinsky. That was Diaghilev that commissioned that as well. But he commissions, say that twice, Gareth. He commissions Poulenc to write a ballet. And away Poulenc goes. And therefore, we get Les Biches, the famous Poulenc ballet. Well, famous enough. It's what set him to fame at the time anyway. Les Biches is the darlings, which people still say in French. Salut ma biche, ça va ma biche? Which I always got confused with because I thought they were calling them a bitch. And I was like, hello my bitch, what's up my bitch? But it's not, it's biche. It's very, very different. Now, at this, Les Biches is typical Poulenc, okay? It's full of colour, great tunes, neoclassical in structure, organised, absurdist, ridiculous. You can hear Poulenc is having a fucking blast writing it. Doesn't take himself too seriously, has a lot of fun. And that is typical of this period of Poulenc's compositional style. Very, very fun, never serious. It's a kind of music that would go great with like a glass of absinthe and a wee Gauloise cigarette at 1 a.m. in the morning in a French street. Now, Les Biches sends Poulenc off to mega fame. It's still regularly played. It's still at l'Opéra de Paris. It's like once a year at Paris Opera. It's so regular. But, dear listener, I can hear you. I hear what you're thinking. You're going, but Gareth, the Poulenc Flute Sonata is actually, it can be quite serious. What the fuck are you talking about? Well, you're correct and very observant and just a little bit rude, to be honest. The sonata can be and is very, very serious. That's because one huge event changed Mr. Poulenc forever. I'm so sorry for the sniffing again, lads. I'm trying to get away from the audio for it. Fucking hay fever. Do you get hay fever in America? I don't know. Does it exist in America? Will I be fine over there? Fuck. I was going to make a really bad joke there, but I'm not going to. Right. So, one of Poulenc's best mates growing up was a fellow composer. A guy called Pierre-Octave Ferroud. Ferroud, spelled F-E-R-R-O-U-D. Now, flute players, you might be familiar with Mr. Ferroud because one of his most famous works is Trois pièces pour flûte seule. 3 pieces for solo flute. You've maybe played it at conservatoire, studied it a bit, thrown it in some programs. It's very fun music, but the most common application of it, knowledge of it, comes from Emmanuel Bayou. He did that fucking amazing album a few years ago, about 6 years ago, I think, called Solo, where it's all the unaccompanied flute works. And he puts the trois pièces, he spreads them out throughout the album, usually in between the Telemann fantasias. So fucking good, that album. So good. It's solo, red cover, and the letter L, from memory, is a flute. It is brilliant. That's nearly Bayou at his best. Weird, because the repertoire is not amazing, but that is Bayou at his fucking best. So anyway, Mr. Ferroud, best mates with Poulenc. So, in 1936, he shoots off to Decapitation in Hungary to give a lecture at the university. Now, what follows is my genuine superstition of a crime, because something does not add up here, and this is why I was up so late. If you Google Mr. Ferroud, you will find out very quickly that he died in a car crash in Decapitation on the 16th of August 1936. Now, Google even harder, and you'll find that he was decapitated during this crash. Google even harder, and you'll find people mentioning that he was a pedestrian hit by the car in the accident. So he was walking, and the car hit him, off went his head. Now, this is where the problem of being American or British comes in. The arrogance, not always, but often from people from these big Anglo countries, because they only consider doing any kind of research in Anglophone academia or in English. It's a natural bias you have. You don't even consider that there's other languages out there. Irish people are a little bit better because we do have our own language. So we're aware of other languages, and usually in Europe, to be honest, when you see the studies of who speaks the most second languages, Ireland is always the best for Anglophone countries. We speak more of a second language than the other Anglophone. And then Canada speaks French as well, and so we're aware that other languages exist. But if you Google in English, you'll get fuck all info about this, and a lot of it wrong. Absolutely wrong. Trust me, I was on the page 4 of the Google search on this. Really, if you Google it in French, you get a picture of the news article, an actual fucking cutout of the newspaper article as the first result. The very first result. Now, the article explains Ferroud, along with a French painter and a Hungarian composer, they drove a car to check out the Hungarian countryside, and they had an accident. Now, Ferroud went through the window at the accident and was decapitated clean, apparently. While his mate died in the ambulance on the way to hospital, and the Hungarian composer was seriously injured. Now, this is where it gets a little bit tasty for me. How the fuck did he get decapitated? How the fuck did your head come off in a car accident? Decapitation is a rare thing, even these days. This is the studies I've been doing, lads. Over a 16-year period, one study in South Africa had only 20 cases of decapitation. This is similar figures in most countries, and the vast majority of those numbers are suicides, often related to a train. I'm not going into graphic detail on that. It is extremely rare in car accidents now. Now, I don't know what car they were driving. I have done my best to find out, because I would have assumed there would have been a certain model at this time. We're also edging in towards communist era, out that direction, so you would assume one car maker would have got the contract to make the production for the entire vehicles of the country, but not quite. But anyway, what I did find out was the most popular car in Hungary at the time was a MAG, M-A-G, a local manufacturer who made the vast majority of the cars in Hungary. If this was the case, MAG cars had a top speed of 35 miles per hour in 1936. Now, if they had been driving a Ford, for example, which was also very popular and entirely possible that they drove to Hungary in the Ford, these had similar top speeds. Usually 40 miles per hour would be possible in the 1936 Ford, but it would be fine for a few minutes, and then the engine would be fucking roaring like a dragon down the road. So it's extremely likely that the car he was going in was going at a max of 30 miles per hour. As any more than that, they wouldn't have noticed it. Now, according to a recent study, drivers have a 6.8% chance of death in a car accident at 30 miles per hour, and a 36.8% chance of severe injuries which could later cause death. Now, no seatbelts at the time does play a bit of a role in this, I have to point that out. So that brings those odds up a wee bit, but the point still stands. It is extremely unlikely a car accident at 30 miles per hour would cause decapitation. So here's what I think. One of two things has happened. Here's my theory. Number one, Farouk suffered from internal decapitation, and the press reported it more dramatically for shock factor. Now, internal decapitation is graphic as fuck. I found this out. This is a new thing for me as well. This is grim. But internal decapitation is essentially when the neck and the head separate. The spine and the head separate, but within the neck. So the neck is intact, but the head is separated from the spine. So your head came off, but it's being held together by your spine. There's actually a video of a footballer that did it once when he was celebrating by doing a backflip. Oh, Jesus Christ. It's like watching one of those fucking things you put in the back of your car, the bobbleheads. So that's option one. That could be very likely. Or number two, there's another option. Farouk suffered from what we call Isadora Duncan syndrome. Now, it's also referred to as long scarf syndrome, and this was named after the American dancer who died in a car crash in Nice in 1927. It's an incident involving a long scarf getting tied up in the machinery. In this case, with Isadora, it was the axle of a moving car, and causing death via strangulation or decapitation. Now, I have to say, the style in Paris in the 1920s and 30s, and still today, it often featured very, very long scarves, for men especially. They are not seen as a winter-only accessory in France. And in fact, they are worn all year round as like a fashion piece. Still today in France, in Paris especially. So that's what I suspect. I suspect Pierre-Octave Farouk's scarf, looking like the dashing Frenchman he was a key factor in the car crash and the subsequent decapitation. That's my bet. However, I can't prove it because there is not a lot of research out there. There is one single biography, like a book on him by a German woman, but it costs like €200. And I can't find a copy of it. It's not in print anymore, so I'd rather just keep my hypothesis. Now, the woman who wrote it actually lives in Germany still, but I cannot find a fucking contact detail for her to go and ask her. But sure. So anyway, we have to keep going because there's a lot of good stuff coming up. But before then, quickly, you know what fucking time it is. The Inline G podcast is free and always will be free. That is a guarantee. However, if you want to donate to the podcast, you can now do so through the Patreon. On the screen now is the address, and for the audio listeners, it is patreon.com/the Inline G Flute Podcast. It costs €5 per month, or whatever that is in dollars or pounds. It's around the same amount. And with that, you're keeping this podcast alive. You get 4 episodes a month. And €5, that's the price of a pint. That's a generous price of a pint. These days, you'd be lucky to get a pint for a $5. If you saw me in a pub and you thought, fuck, I listen to all 4 episodes a month, I get a bit of entertainment, it distracts me, it's part of my life, I enjoy it, I'd like to pay Gareth for his work. There you are. Instead of buying me a pint in the pub, do it virtually. Happy days. I do everything around here, absolutely everything on my own: marketing, graphic design, research, scripts, audio production, video production, and it takes up a lot of my time. So becoming a patron helps generate a regular income for this podcast, meaning I can turn down other work to focus on it. It also pays me for my work. This is a huge amount of work, this podcast. It is growing. I absolutely fucking love it, and your donations make such a difference. Such a difference. It also lets me go and travel to meet the best flute players in the world. Okay? And you get your episodes a wee bit earlier than everyone else, and you get to ask questions and a couple of other benefits. You got your trading cards recently, things like that. I'll look after you as much as I can. So, if you can afford it, please go and subscribe over on the Patreon. You can unsubscribe at any time, whenever you like. No obligations. You just hit the button. You can jump in and out as you like. If you can afford it, it helps a huge amount. If you can't afford it, if you're out of work or times are a bit tough at the minute, that's grand. Don't worry about it. Keep listening for free. You will get the exact same content as everyone else. That's a promise. Now, let's keep going. Anyway, the decapitation of Mr. Farouk actually really fucked Poulenc up. It scarred him a lot. He was on holiday in a place called Rocamadour, which is a beautiful wee town. I didn't know this until I googled it for this podcast. It's a beautiful wee town in the southwest of France. Jesus, southwest of France. Francia. That this place actually had a lot of Christian pilgrims going to it because it's got like a big fucking sanctuary for the Virgin Mary. Sorry, excuse my Irish there. And also, by the way, what I do know it for is it has this fucking amazing goat's cheese. It is absolutely gorgeous. You find it in the shops in Paris. It's well known for the goat's cheese. Wee bit of honey on that, bit of crushed walnut on top. Fuck me. Squirt. So anyway, Poulenc's instant reaction after getting the phone call about Mr. Farouk's death was to go straight to pray and then to compose. And what he composed then was a piece called Litanie à la Vierge Noire, which was for female voices and organ. Shortly after this as well, his famous Mass in G came out, as well as probably his most famous piece, in my opinion, is Organ Concerto. These are both incredibly intense, heavy works with proper violence in them, as well as some like fucking heartbreaking moments of serenity. He's not taking the piss anymore. He's not fun. He's not light. He's went a new direction. PostBestMateDecapitation Poulenc also saw his incredibly emotive opera Les Dialogues des Carmélites composed. This is proper Poulenc. Les Dialogues is proper Poulenc. It is fucking incredible stuff. It's about a Christian order called the Carmelites or the Carmélites, and that was in post-revolution France, who wouldn't give up their religion even after the revolution, so they got the guillotine. Heads chopped off. The Carmelites were real, well, the Carmelites or the Carmelites were real, but this story is fiction. Also, by the way, yeah, I've got that written down here. So they got done by guillotine. Do you know, I think I've talked about this in the podcast before, but do you know the last time someone got sentenced to death by guillotine in France? 1977. 1977. Is that like Star Wars came out then, didn't it? Like people, you could have, theoretically, you could have watched Star Wars and then got your head chopped off both legally at the same time in France, man. The fucking French are class. Now, also, the Dialogue de Carmelite, his seminal work, his big work, it is not a coincidence that it ends with decapitation. It ends with people getting their heads chopped off. Okay, this is not a coincidence. It's obviously still fresh in Poulenc's mind about Mr. Farouk. He deliberately puts this in. Although all French people are a bit predisposed to the fucking guillotine, you know, they love it. They'd all be walking around without heads if they had their way in France. But even the score of the orchestra when it happens, it's fucking violent. Like, it recreates the sound of the guillotine, the head falling. Berlioz actually did the same thing. Berlioz did the same thing in Symphonie Fantastique, where you get, like, it's got the head rolling after a fucking decapitation. But to be fair, Berlioz at the time was off his tits on opium, so he's got a bit of an excuse. Now, boobs is the title of my next section. Not all of PostBestMateDecapitation Poulenc was serious. Some of it was still very, very fun. And one of his works was called Les Mamelles de Thérésias, or de Thérésias. Fuck me, Gareth. I'm reading that as if it's German. Les Mamelles de Thérésias, or, translated in the English, The Titties of Tiresias, which tells the story of a woman wanted to become a man due to being fed up with being a submissive woman. So in the opera, she has these like two big fucking giant balloons, right? I swear to God, this is true. You can look this up. She has these 2 big giant balloons where her titties should be, right? And then they start singing. The balloons start fucking, her titties start singing, and then she finishes the opera, or the aria, it's very early on. When she finishes the aria, the balloon, she decides, I'm going to chop off my tits, and the tits just float away. Off they go into the air, man. And the amount of times I wish I could look up into the sky and see a pair of tits flying, that'd make my fucking day. That would be class. Imagine balloons just flying about. And then sure, Teresa has left with this lovely smooth chest. They should have called her doorbell. Do you know why? No knockers. Fuck's sake, right. That's a great nickname, by the way. I heard that recently. Someone said that. People used to call her doorbell because she had no knockers. Oh, fuck. Right. How does this all relate to the flute sonata, the Poulenc flute sonata, our beloved work as flute players? Well, it doesn't, to be honest. I just really like the story. But I will say, Poulenc sonata is PostBestMateDecapitation. So it's that era of Poulenc. And it does contain, therefore, the very serious moments that Poulenc's works did get known for at this time, especially the second movement of the Flute Sonata. We all know that. However, it also has that fun and energy and absurdism and surrealism, like a big set of balloon titties. So I believe the context behind that is so important to understanding Mr. Poulenc when we're going to play this piece. Because the piece was finished in 1957. He was working on it in 1956. He always intended for him and Jean-Pierre Rampal to play the debut performance together. He actually wrote a letter to Jean-Pierre saying, Jean-Pierre, you've always wanted me to write a sonata for flute and piano? Well, I'm going to. And the best thing is that the Americans will pay for it. I'd been commissioned by the Coolidge Foundation to write a chamber piece in memory of Elizabeth Coolidge. I never knew her, so I think of the piece as yours. I fucking love how Poulenc just took those big fat American dollars and didn't give a fuck about your woman. Didn't give a fuck. I love you, Francis. I feel myself in Mr. Poulenc. And on the 18th of June 1957, Poulenc and Jean-Pierre Rampal gave the debut performance in Strasbourg. Which also, by the way, 18th of June, Paul McCartney's birthday. And at that time, that was Paul McCartney's 15th birthday. So Paul McCartney was 15. The Beatles were already a thing when the Flute Sonata was played for the first time. Now, I want to give you a quick rundown of some important recordings to listen to for this gorgeous piece, because I fucking love this piece. You know, I used to hate it as a kid because we played it all the time when we were studying. We were like 13, 14. It was one of those pieces that would show off that you had a decent technical level without understanding a fucking clue about how beautiful and French and nuanced and colourful this music is. It was just play the first movement, get through that bit with a double tonguing. That's it. It was just a technical exercise. You just blast it out like Billy Big Balls and away you go. It was awful, and it put me off because I played it so much. Then when I moved to France and I started studying Poulenc's music, I went back to the sonata with fresh ears. I was like, Jesus Christ, that is incredible. It is beautiful music. I fucking love Poulenc. It's so fun and colourful and dark and rich, and then the second movement, it'd break your heart. So, recordings, anyway. These are some of the recordings that actually got me back into the piece. Got me, rediscovered my love for it. Now, the first one, there is a clear winner. There's a clear winner of the best record of this piece. And it is a video of Jean-Pierre Rampal and Francis Poulenc on the piano playing it together at the Salle Gaveau. That's the one. That's the one you have to watch. It's on YouTube. It's in black and white. It was some kind of concert for, I think it was for a charity or maybe for Poulenc himself. The video of the second movement is on YouTube, definitely. That's the one you have to watch. Next up is another Rampal recording with Robert Véron-Lacroix. Now, that's a good recording. Also, the American debut was also recorded by those two. So they were the ones that gave the American debut of the performance, and that was recorded, but there's a studio version as well. I think the studio version is a wee bit better, so I get onto that. Now, the next recording is Michel Debust. Michel Debust is one of the great French flute players with Jacques Février. Fucking incredible. Go have that one looked up. BBC Radio 3 actually did a survey on this, and I often disagree with BBC Radio 3 because it's fucking pish, but they have people like, it's not pish, it's just sometimes it's a bit, They have people like Sharon Bazali and Adam Walker, who are both fucking amazing. Massive fans of them, so kudos to BBC Radio 3 for doing that, especially Adam Walker. I feel like it's a little bit underrated outside of Britain. But they also have William Bennett. Personally, I'm not a huge fan of William Bennett's playing. Not really my cup of tea. I don't know, just find it a bit too heavy, a bit too in your face. I don't know, not my cup of tea. So I never really enjoyed listening to Bennett in any sense. Not to say he's a great artist. He is a great artist. He's done amazing things. Just my personal, not my cup of tea. I don't fuck with that. But 2 special mentions for me. The orchestrated version. There is versions for flute and orchestra. Now, the orchestration is not done by Poulenc. Okay, he didn't do the orchestration. It's very important. But the versions recorded, there's one with Jimmy doing it, which is incredible, and the Royal Philharmonic. And a conductor whose name I won't mention. I'm not going to tell you who the conductor is. Fuck that guy. And also for that one, if you're going to watch it, I've said this before, if you're going to watch videos or listen to music by problematic composers, or it's not composers, problematic conductors or artists, and you still want to watch it anyway, go to YouTube and find a version uploaded by someone else. That's the best middle ground, because then that way the problematic person is not getting any income for it. It's not recognized in official streaming services or charts. You still get to listen to it. So in the case of Jimmy with the Royal Phil, there is a version uploaded to YouTube, not by the official person. So that's the best way to do it. And also another great version of the orchestral. Fuck's sake, Gareth. It's 10 o'clock in the morning. I should not be like this. The orchestral version is Emily Bainin. Now, man, you've heard me talk about Emily Bainin in this podcast so many times. Oh my god. Like that's a fucking artist, man. She's a witch in that. I don't know how she does some of the things she does. So sensitive. So she's made for Poulenc's music. Absolutely made for it. She's recorded with the BBC National Orchestra of Wales, and Bramwell Tovey is amazing. So go check out that recording. BBC National Orchestra of Wales, one of my favourite orchestras. An orchestra I know very well because I lived there. Emily's from Wales. She is Welsh. So it's a great recording. And the Welsh have a bit more, I don't know, they have a bit more passion for these things. They're a bit more red-blooded than the English. Now, I personally prefer the Poulenc Sonata as chamber music, flute and piano. But the orchestral version, it's like a wee palate cleanser. If you're used to hearing it too often, go listen to the orchestral version. It sort of freshes up. Now, if you want my personal favourite recording, well, it doesn't matter if you want it or not. You're fucking getting my personal favourite recording. You know what's coming here, lads. You know what I'm going to say. The best version of the Poulenc Flute Sonata ever recorded is, of course, Magali Monnier. Obviously, Magali has recorded with Catherine Conneau. It's actually on YouTube, the whole version, beautifully filmed at the Auditorium Radio France. It was a live concert, which is unbelievable. She's wearing these big fucking giant heels as well. It's French as fuck, and it is absolutely perfect. It is perfect. Catherine as well, the piano player. I know her personally. I've met her a few times. She's the piano player in the Radio France Orchestra, the Orchestre Philharmonique de Radio France, but she also taught at the same college I was at, so I was familiar with her, and she's unbelievable. How she plays so incredibly well orchestrally and in chamber music, I will never know. I've never seen a piano player be that good at it. But her and Magali doing it together, fuck me, just stick it into YouTube. Magali Monnier, Poulenc Sonata. You want the proper French version of it, you want the way it's meant to be done, that's the one to go to. Also, just on a side note, I always find this fascinating. Obviously, with modern cameras and modern recording techniques and equipment, we're getting 4K recordings, and we're also getting multiple camera angles much more frequently. It's not reserved for the big networks anymore. And they always zoom in your fingers. Always. When you're a flute player, they go in your fingers. And what I love to see is when people are holding their fingers up just above the keys for them to go down. Are they shaking? Are they nervous? Not a fucking drop. They're stone cold sober, her fingers. And I was like, how the fuck are you not nervous? This is like... Because it's a big concert. It's the full orchestral auditorium for a chamber music concert, which is quite strange, especially at Radio France. So, it's just beautiful. Now, 2 final points before I let you go. Because I have to say these things, guys. I have to get this out. I'm not going to give you advice on how to practice this piece, because there's plenty of that on the internet. There's plenty of places you can go to find how to practice this. But I will leave you with 2 pieces of advice if you're playing the Poulenc Sonata. First of all, give the piece of music, give the score to your piano player well in advance. The piano part to this sonata is a fucking monster. It is not an accompaniment. This is true chamber music. I would actually go as far to say the piano part is more important than the flute. Please remember that. You're not a soloist in this piece of music at all. At all. If anything, you're second fiddle to the piano. So give your piano player a lot of a warning. If it took you 6 months to learn the Flute Sonata, it could take your piano player, if they've never played it before, an equal amount of time. Give them the chance to learn it. Rehearse it properly. They're not accompanying you. Not in this music. Now, also... fuck me, right. Here we go. It winds me up. A lot of people on the internet are providing various tips on how to play the very first note correctly. The first note is a top E natural. And I've heard all kinds of weird tricks like, putting the little finger in between the C sharp and the D sharp keys at the bottom to stabilize it and help it pitch. This is American advice, okay? We don't listen to this If you want to learn it the French way, I'll tell you the same thing that Catherine Conton, my teacher, principal of the Paris Opera, told me when I asked for advice on how to play the first note of the Poulenc Flute Sonata. Go and practice. So, that's it, lads. Enjoy. Go and have a blast with Mr. Poulenc and his wacky world. Go and enjoy the singing tits and the decapitations. This has been a lot of fun. I really enjoyed doing this episode. I'm hoping you guys are enjoying the solo episodes as much as I am. There's actually a little bit of a turn in the solo episodes, which is so interesting to see. Previously, the solo episodes did way worse than the guest episodes, generally, because guests bring their own audience. The solo episodes, the numbers are starting to go up on them, which I'm so happy with. It means that we're starting to hit a turning point. Perfect timing as well, just for episode 52. So, amazing. I only have you guys to thank for that. Seriously, this podcast is going places. The merch is arriving. The stickers are here. The trading cards are here. We're taking America by storm. I've got so many things planned for NFA. You won't believe what's going to be happening over there. And then things after that, you see. Sponsors are on. We've got all these collaborations. It's all because of you guys. It's you guys doing this, listening to it, recommend it to your friends. So, let me know what you think of the episode. But please, if you get the chance, if you don't want to spend the money on the Patreon, that's grand. But if you get the chance, go and like the podcast. Whatever you're listening to now, give it a like. Give it a 5-star rating. If you're not going to give it a 5-star rating, don't give it any rating, please. But give it a 5-star rating. Subscribe on all the different services. Tell your friends about it. Get the podcast out there. I want to build as much as we can before we go to America. I don't want this to just be the biggest flute podcast in the world. I really think this could be one of the biggest classical music podcasts in the world. It's unique in what it's doing. So we're going to do that. Right, lads, have a lovely weekend. Free Palestine, Slan.